Welcome back to Headlines. Thank you everyone for joining me again. And if you skipped tonight, you're probably not watching, so never mind. I'm Wes Austin, and these are today's top stories. First up, President Trump just scored a huge win in court. The Ninth Circuit ruled that he can deploy the National Guard to Portland. Portland won't have seen this much law and order since the last time someone enforced a mask mandate. Some Democrats are saying that Republicans shut down the government, but we have a clip of Jon Stewart accidentally telling the truth, for once. Next, Stephen Colbert clashed with Karine Jean-Pierre about Joe Biden's brain, which is impressive because between the three of them, there's probably one working frontal lobe. And finally, Bernie Sanders went on The View and got schooled by one of the hosts. Sarah Hines just became the first person on The View to say something that could survive outside a yoga studio. And then we go on to the comments section on the segment we did about Don Lemon. Are Don Lemon and Joy Reid the same person? Are you sure? And then on the segment about Gavin Newsom, where he did a bailout for utilities, did Newsom waive a $200 million fine for one of these utilities? And if so, which one? Okay, let's dive in. President Trump can move forward with deploying National Guard troops to Portland after the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in his favor on Monday, marking a major legal victory for the administration. The National Guard will be tasked with restoring order and teaching residents how to use soap. Early in October, U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut in Oregon had halted the National Guard deployment, calling Trump's decision untethered to reality. Portland's reality check bounced a long time ago. A three-judge panel issued a 2-1 decision overturning one of the 2 temporary restraining orders that had blocked the deployment. The court's majority wrote, "After considering the record at this preliminary stage, we conclude that it is likely that the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority under 10 U.S.C. 12-4063, which authorizes the federalization of the National Guard when the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States." To welcome the National Guard, Portland's Visitor Center is handing out free maps that say, "Here's what used to be here." You know it's bad when Jon Stewart, the guy who made a career defending every Democratic position, basically says, "Yeah, we shut down the government to protect corporate profits." That's like your defense attorney standing up in court and saying, "Your Honor, my client is super guilty."
To the American people. But what Democrats find themselves in a place is we've shut down the government to protect subsidies for an insurance marketplace that funnels $800 billion a year into the pockets of all these insurance companies.
$800 billion to insurance companies? You know what you could buy with $800 billion? The Democratic Party, apparently. On his show, Stephen Colbert and former White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre clashed while discussing Joe Biden's mental acuity, with Karine defending Biden. So basically, it was one person pretending to be surprised and another pretending to be honest. Colbert started the conversation by discussing how in her book, Karine says that she left the Democratic Party because they weren't fighting hard enough and because they betrayed Joe Biden. Colbert then steered the conversation toward Biden's very apparent mental decline and his disastrous debate performance.
Well, just jumping in here. Yeah, it was very personal to those of us who watched it, too, because it was a shock to our system to see that. Because, I mean, you're talking to a guy who helped raise $25 million for Joe Biden in March of that same year. And three months later...
Thank you for that. Thank you for stepping in and doing that.
I saw a guy who I had not seen backstage at the benefit that I did.
Colbert was shocked. He raised $25 million and then realized they didn't buy a president, they bought a retirement home. But Colbert didn't let up, calling Biden's debate performance worse than simply disappointing.
Was the debate performance. Everything is downstream of that.
And no one is saying that the debate performance wasn't shocking, wasn't a disappointment. No one is saying that.
Disappointment is such a light term.
I use your words.
It was harrowing.
I use your words.
Okay, look, listen, we're never going to agree on this.
We're not.
Karin's in a hostage situation of her own making. Admit you knew, you're a liar. Admit you didn't know, and you're incompetent. She's choosing option 3. Insist that sharp as a tack and complete cognitive collapse are somehow both true depending on the lighting. Mark your calendars, everyone. Someone from The View said something that made sense. Senator Bernie Sanders was on The View when he started being questioned about the government shutdown, and host Sarah Hines empathized with federal workers who aren't getting paid and said that Congress shouldn't be getting paid either. Here's the clip.
Although as if Congress didn't take their money while they were waiting, because right now it's hard to imagine it's incentivized. It's easier for the politicians in D.C. to go away from each other and say, we will win this way, while people are losing their paychecks. If Congress just said, we're not going to take our paychecks till we figure this out, that would be a noble step in the right direction, I would say.
That's not everybody can afford to do. You got some young people there with kids there.
Either can the people that aren't getting paid, though.
Bernie's worried about congressmen with kids. Apparently, he thinks federal workers reproduce asexually. Now on to the comment section. So the first segment we're looking at is where Hakeem Jeffries called Caroline Leavitt sick and demented. Do you remember that segment? Good old Hakeem. So we have this comment from QD McGraw. Hakeem needs to take a good look in the mirror. He looks ridiculous without his sombrero. Okay, then on the segment about John Bolton being indicted and he turned himself in. So on that segment, we have this from Tim Rachu, 8614. Even that mustache can't sweep this under the rug. Anything about his mustache is funny. I can't. And here's another one about his mustache. So this is Victoria Witherspoon, 7585. If Bolton is allowed to keep a thick mustache in jail, those bits of food might come in handy. Do you think he could fit, in the prison yard, right, when you're in prison, cigarettes are a big deal. I just wondered if he could fit a cigarette in there. If somebody asked him for a cigarette, he's like, let me, just a second. I have one. He probably could fit one across the whole thing. If you could bend him, I bet you he could do two. Okay, sorry, too much on the cigarette thing. All right, on the segment about Don Lemon, where he encouraged illegal immigrants to go get firearms, like a psychopath. This question is from Evan Torrance, 5471. The side profile picture of Don Lemon looks like Joy Reid. And I wanted to look at this because to see how similar they do look. So here's that side profile of Don Lemon, and I'm going to put up Joy Reid. They're looking kind of similar, aren't they? Now, I did ask ChatGPT to help me with this, and it actually helped. It didn't refuse. A lot of times it will not want to help me, but so I asked it to put on glasses and AirPods to try to, make Joy Reid at least be wearing the same things as Don Lemon, and I'm going to put that up. They're looking pretty close, right? I mean, maybe not the same person, but looking at those two together, I mean, come on. Don Lemon absolutely could be Joy Reid's older sister, right? Okay, then on to the segment about Gavin Newsom signing that bailout for utilities. It was kind of hidden in that long bill. So we have this from Spencer, Spencer at Hearn. Let's see, okay. PG&E, so that's Pacific Gas and Electric, donated to Newsom campaign. They caused a fire. He then waived a $200 million fine, conflict of interest right there. So let's look at first, did they donate to Newsom and did they cause a fire? And then let's look at this fine. So there were several things in there. And looking at this article from the New York Post, when was this? March of 2025, so not that long ago. Gavin Newsom bailed out utility responsible for California wildfires after collecting 6 figures in donations new book claims. So this is a few snippets from that article. And if you were mad about the thing yesterday, this is just going to make you more mad. So if you need to take more blood pressure medication, I'm not a doctor, so don't do that. But anyway, so PG&E pled guilty in June 2020 to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter in the wildfires that destroyed the Northern California town of Paradise in 2018. That blaze, named the Camp Fire, ignited because of a downed PG&E power line on November 8, 2018, burning more than 153,000 acres, leveling 13,500 homes, and killing 85 people. Yikes. But far from holding the massive utility accountable, Newsom spearheaded a legislative bankruptcy deal that allowed the utility to continue operating, then signed $21 billion in new insurance protections for PG&E into law, the authors said. PG&E is a big donor to California Dems with close ties to the Newsoms. The highlights of the book obtained by the Post reveal. Okay, and here's the last snippet from that article that we're going to look at. Over the past 2 decades, Newsom and his wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, have accepted at least $700,000 in donations from PG&E. The funds went to Newsom's many campaign coffers and his wife's gender justice films, at least one of which was screened in PG&E's corporate San Francisco skyscraper in 2011, the authors said. So a lot of those things from that first comment are looking like they are true. Now, what about that $200 million fine? That wasn't mentioned in the New York Post article, but I did find this from ABC 10, and I think this is a local affiliate in Sacramento, I think. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But here's the headline. State forgives PG&E's $200 million fine despite crimes and judge's warning. Against the advice of the federal judge supervising PG&E on probation, California regulators helped PG&E by waiving a $200 million fine for causing deadly fires. And that is from May of 2020. Yeah, so anyway, that looks like those those points brought up in that comment, they were correct based on what I'm finding here, which is just, that does not look good for Gavin Newsom being in bed with the utility companies there in California. Thanks for watching Headlines. And if you know anyone out there who might enjoy my clips or videos, please do send them a link. I would appreciate it. I'm Wes Austin. Good night.